We're going to look at the question of whether or not a bridge plate overlay hurts the tone of the guitar. So let me explain this for a minute. The reason we're using an overlay on the bridge plate is because the string windings on this guitar come up onto the saddle. And you can see that right there, right? You can see that string winding laying up on the saddle on all of these strings, except for these, which is interesting. Interesting. I bet these have a long winding, but we're going to try to, because you see these are down, which is where they're supposed to be. So I got a couple things I'm going to do here. This is, first of all, this is a 1945 D18. And so the scarcity of this guitar dictates a little bit as to what we're going to do here, because, you know, the first thing you want to do on something like this, a vintage guitar like this, is, you know, don't cause any damage. Try to maintain the originality, that sort of thing. If it was a 1970s Martin that I was doing an overhaul on, I don't care. You know, I'll take care of this problem when I put a new bridge plate in there. So, vintage guitars like this one, the bridge plates are usually about 90 thousandths of an inch thick. My bridge plates that I use on 70s Martins are about 125 thousandths of an inch thick. Part of the reason I do that is to help pull the ball end down, but the other reason that I do it is to support the bridge here. So your bridge plate is underneath the bridge, and my concept of this is to make this system here really stiff so that it transmits the vibrations into the X braces. In other words, I want a good solid surface under that bridge. So here's a bridge, and you got a top, and I want a good solid stiff surface here so that this bridge doesn't go flexing and bending in the middle and twisting, and therefore losing vibrations off to the X braces. So I make my bridge plates a little bit thicker than vintage plates for those two reasons. So keep that in mind, because that influences a little bit my philosophy on what we're going to do here in this system here. All right, so we got to get this winding off of here. Now, I've already looked inside this guitar. It's with mirrors and everything. The ball ends are not digging up into the bridge plate, which is a pretty common problem. I suspect two things here. I suspect that because the unwound strings are where they should be, and the wound strings are way up here, I suspect that these strings have a long winding. So that's one thing I'm going to look at here for my information here. I don't know what kind of strings these are. These are the strings that came on it when it shipped. So we'll get a couple strings out and we'll see how the windings compare. But this guitar right now, the ball ends are resting on the bridge plate, and you're going to see in a minute when I put the camera in there. I've got a 1942 D18 over here, and I did a whole video on this. It had the same problem, and after discussion, I used a thin bridge plate overlay. And I got the whole video on that as to why I used that overlay and how I built the overlay and that sort of thing. Finally, I'm getting to my point here. My point, what we're going to do in this video is I've already recorded the guitars, but you're going to hear an A, B, C of both of these guitars. They're going to be separate. So you can listen to this one first, and then you can go listen to this one if you're not bored to death. And you will hear the ball end resting straight up on the bridge plate. You will hear it with a thin maple cap, and you may hear it with possibly a thin ebony cap. We'll see. But I'll try to get you some things like that. So we'll see if the wood makes a difference. I wish I had some brass in here. I might have some brass. I do have some brass over there. So what we're going to do then, scratch. We're going to have the ball plate on the bridge plate. We're going to have a thin maple cap, so we can see if the cap itself makes any difference, because these are both maple bridge plates. I'm going to stick with the kind of wood. Put the camera in here on each shot so you can see what it looks like. We'll record the guitars. I'll give you my observations. The strings are going to be the same. Everybody asks that. Did you change strings? Dude, no, I'm trying to keep everything as consistent as I possibly can. These are the same strings. They're dead. They're not dead. They're used, you know. You don't want jangly brand new strings on here that might hide whatever it is that you're trying to listen for. You just want strings, you know. All right. Let's take a look inside this guitar, and I will do the stuff. All right, this is the 1945 D18, and this is the way it came to me. And I want you to look at how the ball ends rest on the bridge plate. They're not digging in. Nothing hinky's going on there, okay? But take a look at it. This is what it looks like. All right, there we go. Now I'm going to de-string it, and I'm going to put ball ends on the each string, and then we will take it back inside and record it. And at the same time, well, we'll do that. And then at the same time, I'm going to take this 1942 over here, and I'm going to take the bridge plate overlay off of it. We'll get some video of that first, though. Here's how we get the ball ends. We get some old strings like this, and we take our clippers, and we reach up here, and we clip this thing off, peel it out, and drop it. And you end up with these ball ends, and you can start a collection of these. The thing I don't like about this is that, say you're on stage playing and you break a string. Well, then it falls inside your guitar. Now you got the ball ends rattling around in there. And on stage, you're going to have to change your string, or in a performance, you know. You're going to have to change your string. You're going to have to reach in there and get that ball end. You're going to have to carry ball ends around. And every time you change strings, you're going to have to put the ball end back on it. And it's just a hassle, you know. Also, if you look at a string, you can see that the core wraps around this ball, and the whole hypothesis here, is that having that ball end rest on the bridge plate will transmit better vibrations to the bridge plate. Now that is an assumption, you know. You need to test that assumption, and that's kind of what we're doing here, you know. I think it's valid. I mean, I think it's a valid assumption, but how much effect does it have? Some people argue, and have tested it, that all vibrations stop, all significant vibrations stop at the saddle. So the string crossing the saddle kills all the vibrations, and then there's no more vibrations after that. So a bridge plate doubler should not matter. The ball ends don't matter. And all of this stuff. I'm not sure I totally agree with that, because I've had ball ends rattle on the pins when you don't seat the string right. The ball end will rattle on the pin and make a buzz. So my question is, why is it moving? If there's no vibrations down there, how come it's rattling? I think it's pretty minimal. You know, there's vibrations down there, and yeah, it's probably minimal. Those vibrations going into the top and actually producing a sound you can hear. It's probably minimal, but, you know, you add up 10 small things and you have something that's kind of significant. So I'm not quite ready to poo-poo the whole idea of all vibrations stopping here. So that's really the big hypothesis here that we're testing is, you know, does it make any difference what we have down here underneath here? All right, here's something we're going to look at, and this is the string on the 1945. Let's look at the length of the winding right here. Here's the length of the winding. Here's the winding. And I'm going to measure as best as I can from, we should measure from the top of the ball right here, from right here, where it sits, down to here, because that's the length that's in other words, if I measure from the back of the ball, and these balls might be different sizes or something, I don't know. We're going to measure from the front, And I'm going to get, you know, a rough measurement here. We can't be talking about thousandths or 100,000ths of an inch here. It either is or it ain't. Let's use these calipers. Oh, that's pretty good. So we've got about almost 3/4 of an inch. 0.745. Almost 3/4 of an inch of winding here. I don't know if that's a lot or not. Here's a set of Diodario EJ17s that I dug out of the trash. And here's the low E right here. And we're going to measure that. And I can already tell you, here's the, I haven't even touched the calipers. So here's what we got here. Wow. Look at that. Shoot, that might be half our problem right there. You know, somebody suggested that on the my comments, I think. And they suggested I try Martin strings, which have a lower winding. And I'll tell you what, they're right. These are probably Diodarios, because that's what I use. We'll get a couple more sets out here. But wow, these are way under. These are, that's going to take care of your problem right there. But we still got to test this. Let me grab a set of Diodarios. This is a 320. Here's a set of Diodarios that I know to be Diodarios. This is not a low E, but that's okay. You know, we're just looking here. And yeah, this one's considerably shorter than whatever string that is. That's gold. Diodario, you know, has colored balls. So I don't know what I just pulled off. Don't know. Wow. Well, that's good news. I suspected that as soon as I started paying attention here. And I looked at those unwound strings, and I said, man, those are sitting down nice. So they must have a different winding length. Okay, here's what you do. And this is a lot easier with new strings because you don't have this stupid bend here. You just get your string and you slip the ball end over it like that. And you run it all the way down the string, and it comes in like this and sits there. And we'll take a shot on the inside of the guitar. This is the low E. So we're looking good here. Let's go ahead and get that shot. And that will, in fact, pull it down enough, which I will show you. I feel like making some sort of PBS TV broadcast. Since the winding length was suggested by one of the people that watch my videos, I feel like saying something like, you know, this channel supported by viewers like you. But no, seriously, you know, I appreciate the comments. So let's take a look at this. And there's our winding with the ball end on there. That looks real good, you know. I'm totally happy with that. But really, the solution is to change the bands of strings here. Let's take a look inside. All right, that's what it looks like inside with the ball end on the extra ball end. And I will finish up these strings and then string this thing up, take it in and record it. And we will keep repeating this process. But you see what it looks like anyways. This is the 1942 D18. This is what the windings look like right now. We're going to take a look at those windings in a second. But here's what my doubler looked like. Now, if you noted on that doubler, if you didn't go watch the video where I built the thing, it only goes to the front of the pins. So the doubler goes to the front forward because all I'm trying to do is pull the ball end down, and there's no reason for that doubler to come back here. All it needs to do is come to the front. A lot of people make a doubler that goes like this big square thing, and you don't need that. All you need it is on the front to pull the ball ends down. So now what I'm going to do is, let's just take a look at these the windings on this one to see if maybe we had the same sort of problem here. My pliers are still locked in there. Let me lock them. Yeah, my pliers. These are pliers. They're sitting there. My calipers are still locked in. Let's take a look at this one. Now what's cool about using the doubler, you know, you don't have to mess with those ball ends. And so I can change this string, pop a new set of strings in, and I don't have to worry about the doubler on this one. This one is still shorter than that other set. And I'm going to guess, you know, you can see it here. I think you can see it. That's the difference right there. It's not as short as the D'Addarios were. And I don't think these are D'Addarios, are they? Did we have colored ball ends when we were looking in there? I'm pretty sure these are the string joys, because I think I changed strings on this when it came in. They're not D'Addarios, so I think they're string joys. So they've got a little bit of winding too. So, all right, now I'm going to reach in there and I'm going to moisten that bridge plate, the overlay, and I'm going to pop it out of there. I did this, you've watched my other video, but I used this glue for a reason, and that is because it's a very weak, wimpy glue, and all I got to do is soak that plate with a little bit of water for a couple minutes, and I'm going to be able to pull that sucker right out of there. So I'm going to get all my strings off of here and soak it with water for a minute, and then while I'm doing that, I will ball in out of these strings. Okay, I'll say this before we get into the A-B part. You may or you may not hear a difference. I can't tell you because I have not A-B'd any of these guitars back to back myself. You know, I played them on the camera, I went out and did the work. I came back in and re-recorded it again. So I'm not going to give you my observations here. I think there's a few small differences here, but I'm going to leave that up to you to tell me what you hear. Also, I do not identify which changes are made until the end of the video, and there'll be a cue card that tells you which guitar was which. I don't want to bias you too much, so just listen to them and see what you think.
you.